All right.
The Democratic National Convention starts today.
Right.
And you want to know what a really interesting... I don't know if you guys... Did you guys see Kamala Harris on the cover of Time magazine? God, son of a biscuit. Did you guys see, in all seriousness, did you guys see Kamala Harris on the cover of Time magazine? I think it is an incredibly interesting moment in time, because also what I think is hysterical was Donnie's reaction to Kamala. And I only say it that way because he says it that way. But Kamala Harris being on the cover of Time magazine pissed Donald Trump off so much. And I can't. Okay. It pissed him off so much that Donald Trump actually showed the image, was shown the image and said he is better looking than Kamala Harris.
Right.
He actually, and I was impressed with Donald Trump for a moment or two, because he had actually been giving a really good policy speech where he was talking about her $25,000 for home buyers and how are you going to pay for that, and like all the things that he should have been talking about. And then Donnie lost his mind because Kamala Harris got on the cover of Time and they did an artist rendering of her. This is the cover of Time. He says he's better looking than she is.
Which to me...
which is amazing to me.
It is, but at the same time, it's kind of an odd response to me. Like, I don't know. Like, that's where you go when you see she's on the cover of Time. Like, hey, I'm better looking than you. Like, I don't know. That one just didn't quite make a lot of sense to me. It didn't. I'm not saying it's a bad comment or like, it just didn't really make a ton of sense to me. I was like, huh, that's an interesting place to go. Like, I would have thought that Donnie would have maybe spun that into, hey, well, she's on the cover of Time because X, Y, and Z. Or like, you know, like spun that into a negative look instead of just saying people should vote for me because I look better, apparently, than she does on the cover. Like, I don't know. I just thought that part was a little different.
And I thought it was interesting hearing a lot of Republican strategists over the weekend openly talking about their fear of his obsession with women, this Taylor Swift deepfake AI that I'm not going to show you. Of her, it started with her fans. There were AI of a bunch of Swifties wearing shirts that said Swiftie for Trump, which would never happen. And then this AI thing that Donald Trump put on X, where he put a poster of her endorsing him, which never happened. And his obsession with Taylor Swift and Kamala Harris, I thought it was interesting that one of his main supporters yesterday got on Fox News and said his obsession with talking about the way females look is going to lose him this election. And I think that's a very good point. And I actually think the way that the plan anyway for this 4 days for the Republicans of Trump, the party of Trump, is to have town halls and have events to try and draw as many Republican voters and party of Trump voters away from the Democratic National Convention to keep their eyes focused on Trump, which is, to me, really smart.
It is. I would agree with that strategy.
And because historically, as many of you know, unless you're Jake and you don't know the history of our country,
right?
During the Democratic National Convention, historically, Republicans and Democrats during the RNC, you don't do events. You give that party their platform and you let them ride so that they will do the same for you, which is exactly what the Biden administration and the Biden campaign did during the RNC. You didn't hear from them. They didn't run ads, nothing. That's not going to be the case. There's a $300 million ad buy coming down from the Republicans that will air during the DNC. Donald Trump is going to have a bunch of events and speaking engagements and town halls and live streams during the Democratic National Convention, because I think, as Brett Baer pointed out over the weekend, I think he's worried about the power of the Obama ticket, if
Well,
you will.
and to be honest, when you look at polling, and I don't care who you're looking at, whether it's a Republican bias, Democratic bias, she's ahead. And even when you're behind in the poll when the Republican bias polls have you even. That's not a good place to be. And you look at the polling, you can see it right there. I mean, a variety of different polls. And obviously it changes how much she's leading by. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 1. But it's not as though these polling numbers say that Donnie's out by like a 7 to 9 point lead. That's
no,
not
and
what
he
the
said
polls say.
this is the other thing that I thought was very interesting, was he said he's leading 93% of the polls. And I don't know if that's just messaging or if he just doesn't buy into the reality of the race that he's in. But I think if you look at these numbers and notice, what do these numbers not include? None of these numbers include her speech on Friday. And if you look at the Real Politics polls that came out over the weekend, she got a 2-point bump out of that speech she gave on Friday, because she crushed it. There's no way to, you don't have to agree with her policies. And I agree that largely you're going to have to tell us how you're going to pay for that. In other words, how are you going to break it that tax hikes are coming for the rich? How are you going to, because that's the only way you're going to pay for this, is taxing people over $400,000, which is what she's talked about. So she got a 2-point bump out of that Friday speech. Historically, we saw this with Trump in the RNC, and I think we'll see it this time around too. She should get between 3 and 5 points out of the convention. And if she gets a 5-point bump, even if she gets a 3-point bump, she's going to have close to a 7-point lead going into debate season, going into hardcore hit the trail campaign season.
Right.
Because she really hasn't even begun to campaign yet.
Well, and that's what we've been talking about, is that there hasn't been historically speaking, she hasn't had to put a lot of effort in yet, which is kind of crazy.
Because she's getting this. Because Donald Trump is talking about her body parts instead of her policy.
Yeah.
And I will just continue to rail on this, man. If he's not going to talk about policy, if he is not going to talk about immigration and the pull out of Afghanistan, her weakness in foreign policy, if he is not going to talk about anything but that he is better looking than her, that she's low IQ, that she's, not smart.
Surface level insults.
If you are going to continue to attack her, you're going to lose this election, man. You're going to lose this election. And I think one of the things that's interesting is a lot of these polls now include questions about whether or not you believe him. And what's amazing is Trump voters don't believe the things he says, yet they're still voting for him. Trump supporters don't even argue anymore that he lies all the time. That's the movement in this country. What is so special about the party of Trump is that it doesn't matter. They're still going to vote for him, which on its face is something that you're like, oh, yeah, see, told you he's going to win. But those are not the people. Because let's be honest, those that are always going to vote for Trump, he's got them. The never Trumpers are always going to vote for Kamala. She's got them. It's everybody in the middle that they're trying to win.
And I think that pool of everybody in the middle for this election is much larger than the last election.
I think it is very interesting. Like this thing over the weekend where he said, I don't know why we need an election. I am clearly winning. 93% of Americans He's talking like you got to stop saying stuff like that.
I
Like
think that
you got to stop saying that.
yeah, you can't see the problem is you can't suggest things that are not democracy based in terms of process. Like we need an election because that's how we do it in our country. That it's a democratic process. Like we have a foundation, we've got a process in place, and that's how it's going to be done. And I think that the bigger issue is that yeah, he seemingly hasn't quite embraced how to go about these speeches yet. Now I agree with you. He was giving a pretty good speech. Like he was.
Yeah, the Comrade Kamala line about price caps, which again, she's never said price caps. And that line, I think, probably resonated with his base, which is great. But then he just goes into these rambling rants. Like he even said he said something like, they say I'm rambling. I don't ramble. I'm really a smart guy, really smart. I don't ramble. But the other day, anytime I hit too hard, they say I'm rambling and rambling. And the other part of that was, where were the cameras focused during his speech? On him? Sure. But what else did they show? At the 40-minute mark, people walking out. And pretty good stream of people were leaving 40 minutes into his speech. What do we see from Kamala Harris? 10 to 12-minute speeches. Her and Tim Walz, 20 minutes. I think it was 19 minutes worth of speech.
And it feels
from
different.
The two of them.
Yeah, it definitely feels different.
And I don't he talks for 90 minutes. You've got to somebody's got to get him to stop that. Somebody's got to get him to stop that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when we'll see an adjustment, because I have to believe we're going to see an adjustment in strategy a little bit. Like, obviously he's working on it, clearly, based on that speech where, you're talking about policy and you're heading down the right track. And then he got sidetracked, which would be an improvement from, hey, I'm not going to talk about policy at all. So, like, clearly they're talking about it. Clearly they're trying to address it and trying to make adjustments there. But, I don't know. We'll see. I remember watching the RNC this year thinking, yeah, I'm not really connecting with Hulk Hogan. I'm not really connecting with, Kid Rock. I'm not connecting with a lot of the guys that, were speaking at the RNC. Honestly, I just wasn't. And it's not that I disagree with every single policy. I just was like, man, like this just kind of doesn't feel, I don't know, like I guess it should. It just didn't like do that. And I'm curious if the DNC is going to struggle with that as well, or what they take.
I think that's going to be very difficult to struggle with, because the Obamas are wildly popular across party lines.
Well, and the Michelle speech is obviously getting a ton of push already. Even like, obviously she's talking tomorrow, but like
but do you guys understand they issued 15,000 media credentials?
Well, when's the last time you heard from those guys?
15,000 media credentials. This thing's going to get massive coverage. And it's going to be tough for them because what are they going to do? They're going to talk about their booming economy. They're going to talk about the fact that inflation's not real, because it's not anymore. The economic indicators that came out last week were shocking. To see the CPI numbers that came out, this is just broken perfectly for them. And is a lot of it luck? I don't know. But excuse me, you look at and I'm curious, does Donald Trump ever pivot? Because I think this is a really interesting question. Does he ever adjust or pivot? Does he know the reality of this election? Does he truly think he's winning? Who in his circle is telling him you're losing? I don't know who that is, because he keeps hitting this inflation's at its worst numbers ever. It's clearly not.
Well, I think that's the hard part. That's one of the biggest difference in this race between the two parties. You talk about like it breaking perfectly for the Democrats. I don't know if it's broken perfectly, if they deserve credit for that. I don't know. But the point is that when the Democrats say things, they're able to back it up with at least some semblance of numbers. Like they can say, hey, inflation's low, or like, hey, we're drilling, or like whatever. They can say those things and at least be able to lean on numbers a little bit. But they're still going to stretch the truth. Like we know politicians do that. But that's the hard part with Donnie. Like you can't say that you're leading 93% of the polls. You
Well, and
can't
you
say
can't
that
say
stuff.
that inflation's at its worst ever
Yeah,
point. You
like
can't say that Joe Biden doesn't drill. You can't say that he's the worst energy president. Like he needs to talk about stay on immigration. Stay on immigration. If you want to do this borders are thing, she was never the borders are, by the way. She was never even in charge of the border. If you want to do this borders are thing, great. Go with that. That resonates. What I'm questioning and what I'm asking of the party of Trump is, okay, what are you going with that's going to talk to the middle-aged American mother who's at home with her kids, and you keep talking about abortion bans? And the Democrats have done a great job of continuing to push this Project 2025 thing, and now sending in you have reporters now that are doing stings with Project 2025 where they're going in as donors and secretly recording these 2025 leaders talking about how they've already given the Trump campaign a list of staff that will be hired for the Trump administration. Like that doesn't speak to middle-aged mom of 3 that doesn't speak to the female millennial who can't afford to buy a house. And maybe it doesn't ever happen. I don't know. If Donald Trump wants to win this election, he's going to have to pivot at some point.
Yep.
And he's going to have to start talking about things that really matter. If he gets up on that debate stage and he calls her low IQ and calls her stupid, the election's over. He is going to lose big. He is going to lose in a landslide. He needs to get on that debate stage and he needs to hit her with whatever you think your best stuff is that is policy based. Because what happens if he gets into this debate and he says to Kamala Harris, this immigrant crime is out of control. It's the largest it's ever been. She is going to smack him with facts because there is no immigrant crime wave. There is no he's talking about how you're not safe walking the streets. Violent crime is way down. And again, more numbers over the weekend showing that crime is concentrated into about 6 cities. And if you remove those 6 cities from the crime stats, the United States violent crime rates are some of the lowest in the world. Talking about how Chicago's gangland, gun crime and murders in Chicago are way down. You got to get off the 2016 talking points. And I think you got to find a way to become relatable. Donald Trump has to become relatable because if he gets up there and says violent crime, she's going to slap him in the face with that because the facts are not on his side. If he says immigration and the biggest immigration border crossings ever, the facts don't support him on that. Inflation's at its highest point ever. Facts don't support him on that. The economy the economy is crashing. The stock market disagrees with you. Inflation disagrees with you. Job claims disagree with you. So I don't know, what is he going to bring up in this debate? Are you,
or generally,
are you going to, you never have been to the border? That's not actually true. She's been to the border. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see a couple of things. Is the Obama pull still real? Because Barack and Michelle Obama are popular across party lines. And if there are 15,000 members of the media there for her speech, that's not good for the party of Trump. And if that speech, and she is in, both Barack and Michelle Obama are unbelievable public speakers. And if they knock it out of the park, you're in real trouble, dude. You're in real trouble. And then the VP debate, JD Vance talking about women is not where you want this party to be focused on.
Yeah, maybe just stop talking about women. How about that? How about stop, like, I just don't understand why they keep doing it. It like, again, I'm just having the conversation from the standpoint of what's hurting the party of Trump and what's helping them. And we know what's hurting them. It's very
Yeah.
clear. So why continue to do that? Why not just shift to, hey, like, there's a bunch of ways, a bunch of holes you can poke in Kamala's campaign and her policies and everything. Why wouldn't you go after her on policy? That's what I don't get.
Foreign policy specific, you have to tie her to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
You have to tie her. I'd be hitting her on Afghanistan. I'd be hitting her on the border. I would be, and again, even though it's not true, I continue to call her the border czar.
Yeah. Ask her how she's going to pay for things.
I would continue to ask her how she's going to pay for things. How are you this $25,000 stipend for first-time home buyers? Is that a cash payout? Is that something that's going to come through Freddie and Fannie? Is that something that is FHA only? What is that? Where is that? Is that a tax credit?
Like, you got to get her to talk about this stuff so she makes a mistake.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like's not happening. They're not pressing her. And again, it's not like they've had the opportunity to debate her yet, but I'm just saying, like, generally, like, I would be asking these questions in my speeches. Like, I would say, hey, like, stick to your talking points, but bring it up. Like, You're not even bringing it up.
Well, and I think the big question about relatability, it's a big one. It is, can the middle American, and I do think women and minorities are going to decide this election. I don't think white men have ever decided this election, not in the modern era of politics anyway. I think the Black and Latino vote, and I think the female vote will decide this election. And again, I just ask, what 35-year-old female that is a mother of daughters can look their daughter in the face and say, yeah, I'm doing what's best for you by voting for Donald Trump? That's a really tough argument, because Donald Trump has not worked a day in his life. I mean, this guy he's not somebody that worked at a fast food restaurant, or like, what jobs did I have? Like, I worked at Taco Bell. I was a landscaper. Donald Trump is somebody that grew up with wealth, was given wealth. And I think that's significant. Like, fast food. Kamala Harris the other day said she worked at McDonald's. How many people worked fast food or waited tables that can relate to that?
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know, man. I think that relatability is going to be a big part of this debate. And I think from the moment they walk out of Chicago on Friday to that debate in 2 weeks, to November on election day, Donald Trump's got to find a way to relate to the middle-aged American woman that's got kids. I think it's really what it comes down to, because I just don't think that the common man in this country can relate to the wealthiest, can relate to the 1%. I really do not. And Kamala Harris is talking about the middle class, job creation, bringing prices down. She's talking about working at McDonald's. She's talking about car payments,
helping people buy houses.
She's talking, like the other day, she talked about paying for back to school expenses. Do you think Donald Trump has ever once worried about what kind of clothes Barron was going to wear to school? Or is Donald Trump ever worried about affording a backpack? And that's the difference. He's got to get his messaging right. And when his messaging right, he has to stay on that message. And I do think that's what's going to determine the outcome of the election. It is one of those things where millennials are frustrated. Millennials are hurting. Millennials are uncertain. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. They're not buying houses. And that group of people will win this election. They will win. I don't know how else you can look at it. You look at her numbers now in North Carolina after that speech. If you're a party of Trump guy, that's terrifying to you. That she went where you went and drew just as big, if not bigger, of a crowd. And the other thing that I think was pointed out over the weekend on one of the talking head shows was the Democrats have taken the Donald Trump rally playbook and implemented it. And it's working. Energy, rally energy, performances, famous people, short, in, out, done, big message. People will remember those talking points.
They evolved that though. Like I agree, they picked up that playbook, but they said, "Hey, we're not going to do 90 minutes. We're gonna like build up the energy. We're gonna roll in on Air Force One. We're gonna pull up to the hangar. We're gonna walk in, and then we're gonna do what Trump does, which is roll up to the stage, wave to everyone, have that sort of like 5 to 10 minute, period where everyone's clapping and the building's going crazy or whatever. And then you're just going to get to it. You're going to get in, you're going to get out.
Yeah.
You're both going to talk, and then you're going to leave. In that, like, I don't know. I think it is working so far. I don't know if they'll continue to do it. I would guess they would, but we'll see. I just think that there's two different styles here. And unfortunately for Donnie, the numbers currently are helping Kamala Harris. Whether it's the economy or any of this stuff she's talking about.
It's tough to argue the poll momentum that Kamala Harris has. I mean, it is. Yeah. It is. You look at those numbers. It is awfully difficult to say that she's not winning, and maybe it's a gimmick. I don't know. But you look at some of the numbers that are coming out. And again, I'm telling you that you're losing the race. And again, I just asked, has anybody told Donald Trump he's losing the race?
I think that's a great question, man.
Do you think Donald Trump truly knows? Because look at these numbers. This is not accidental, friends. August 6th to 16th. You can't argue these numbers anymore.
Like, look at Arizona. Arizona is a really interesting case to me. Arizona's been Republican for how long? Like, long time.
And Biden flipped it, right?
For the first time but why did that happen? See, this is a really interesting point. And again, to your point, is anyone saying this to Trump? Why did Arizona flip for Biden when it hadn't flipped for anyone else in a long time?
Right.
Oh, that's right, because all the Californians who are too broke to live in California moved to Phoenix, and now that state got flooded with Democratic folks. So when the poll is saying, hey, Donnie's got just a slight lead in Arizona, that tells me that, hey, on a small scale, a small portion of people you're only leading by 1 point there. Again, that tells me where the race is headed. Like, obviously, Kamala should be leading in the Democratic states. Donnie should be leading in the Republican states. Don't look at the race in those states. Look at the race. Who's leading in strongholds? Is Kamala Harris leading in stronghold Republican states?
Yeah, and look at the gap in Georgia. That's a 4-point gap now, which is shocking. And then I talked about the black vote earlier, and I talked about the Latino vote earlier. If the 2024 presidential election were being held today, for whom would you vote? Who would you lean toward? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the Democrats, 49%. White non-college, 34%. White college grad, 51%. White, non-white, non-college, 62%. Non-white college grad, 70%. I mean, it's awfully difficult to ignore that Donald Trump is moving in the wrong direction. And again, for everybody who argues that the black vote is going to Donald Trump, okay, well, show me that.
Again, where are the numbers that say that?
Like, I just...
And this is my point with this election. You like in the comment section is a great example of this. Every time we talk politics, there's always like 3 or 4 guys or commenters who lose their mind and say that we're stupid and uneducated and we have like who they're clearly pro Donnie folks, MAGA people, which is fine. That's fine. I don't hold that against you. But the hard part in this election is Donnie's not giving me anywhere to go to say something positive. Like there's not much when I look at the campaign objectively. There's not much that I can say, yeah, man, wow, he's really doing good here. Like, yeah, you're doing good in Republican states, but your lead's not huge. Like, again, Arizona, you got a 1-point lead or a 2-point lead or whatever it was. Or in these other states where it's just like, hey, man, like, I'm not trying to hate on Donnie. What I'm telling you is that he's not saying the right things. The numbers that are playing out tell us it's going the wrong direction. And the DNC hasn't even happened yet. And this is the direction we're going.
And I remind you where we were 1 month ago. I remind you a month ago. Where were we? Look at the date. July 16th through the 18th. CBS News.
Today's August 19th.
It was a month ago. Donald Trump had a lead. And you start looking at these numbers. And that lead is gone. And it's not because she's an amazing candidate. She's not.
And this is what I always point out. We're not even saying it's about her. It's not about her.
She is a horrendously flawed candidate. But he won't talk about issues. And he continues to push on abortion. He continues to push on issues that repress female rights. This Project 2025 thing polling has also shown that that's a significant factor in people, in likely voters who have changed their vote. Project 2025, I think, is 39% of the reason they changed their vote. It's a huge factor. J.D. Vance, there was questions over the last month about J.D. Vance, then the cross-dressing pictures, then the grandmothers, postmenopausal grandmothers should raise kids. That's their main purpose in life. Like everything I think, and I'll wrap it up by saying this. I think that they thought the election was over. I think they thought the election was over. And I think that, I think it's very difficult to get a machine back up and running. Do you guys understand that he does not have a headquarters in the state of Georgia? That they have had to redeploy their staff and build what's called a ground game in Georgia. That's shocking. And we've also heard that about several other key states. Now, obviously, he's got ground game in Pennsylvania, but he's winning there already. He's winning there. I think where have we seen him go twice in the last month? North Carolina. Where did we see him go? Georgia. Because he knows he's in trouble there. So I think he knows he's trailing. I think he knows by any major measure, by any again, I always get people in the comment section who say, "Oh, you only look at one thing." Here are all the polls, the polls that matter. And they're all Kamala Harris. They're all like, you look at the swing state numbers, they're all Kamala Harris.
And a lot of people say, hey, she's in a honeymoon phase. Hey, she's a new candidate.
Not anymore.
But a lot of people want to use that as an excuse as to why the numbers are here. Okay, let's say that it is still the honeymoon phase. I agree, it's not. But let's say it was. The problem is, who cares what it is? She's leading. And by the way, we have 2 weeks left in August. We're heading to September.
80 days.
It's not early anymore, dude. Call it a honeymoon, call it a whatever you want. The fact is she's leading, heading into the DNC, leaving the DNC. She's probably going to be up by 5 to 6 points, I would guess. We've seen it be bigger than that before, but 5 to 6 is what most people think she'll be up by. And you're going to be in a spot where you're going to have to chase her if you're the party of Trump. And I don't know. I just think that's a dangerous place to be operating from.
78 days from today is election day.
Imagine trying to run her down when you don't have the numbers on your side.
She's going to have to help you.
Yeah.
She is going to have to, she will have to make mistakes.
Like, it'll probably come down to the debates.
If we're being honest. You will have to dominate the debate. I think there's going to be one debate. There's going to be one debate. It's going to be that debate on September 1st. That's it.
Right.
And then Tim Walz and JD Vance. I think that's it. There will not be multiple debates. There won't. That debate, if Donald Trump can just get through 2 hours without insulting her based on her gender or intelligence, he will have a hard time not doing well in that debate.
But again, his prior behavior says he won't.
And if he's going to call her names, that debate's not going to go well. Dude has got to get on talking points. Period. It is so important. So important that it's critical to me. Anyway, there you have it. Always good chat with you folks. Back tomorrow. We are in week 0. We can actually start talking about games. You know, those of us that are Bears fans, we can start talking about the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be great, dude. I'm so excited.
You're not a Bears fan, so you can't talk about the NFL. Or the Bears. You talk about your Detroit Lions. Talk about your guy, Jared Goff.
Right.
Which is fine. As always, the Monty Show presented by our good friends at The Advocates, theadvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. You chat with an injury attorney live online for free, 24/7, 365, and it won't cost you a dime at theadvocates.com. Until tomorrow, say goodbye, Jake.
Goodbye, Jake.